Yeah, hey, I'm Kevin. I am professionally a previs animator and developer for TV shows. And as a hobby, I put an unnecessary amount of time and effort into making fan games about anime girls for some reason. This is one of them. It was, decently successful last year. It's free. You can go play it on itch.io. But the main thing I want to talk about today is I hate tutorials. I hate when games tell me what to do. Both as a player, I feel like it wastes my time, but as a developer, I feel like it's an ineffective way to teach the player something. If the player figures something out themselves, they're more likely to have it, stick in their head. So, one of the best ways to do that, and I've tried to learn from the greats. I've tried to learn from Super Mario Brothers, from Donkey Kong Country games, from Celeste, is to teach the player how to play just through a few principles of level design. Now you can see here on the title screen, I do have a tutorial telling you which button ground pounds. And I only added this after a lot of feedback saying that they couldn't figure out which button ground pounds on the title screen. So this is the only bit of tutorial in the entire game. And, but having the tutorial, instead of press start to play, it's telling you, the tutorial starts on the title screen. So you press ground pound, and you immediately jump into the gameplay. Now, here, before we've even entered the first level, again, we're already jumping into the first two principles of teaching through level design. The first is simplify the controls as much as possible. This isn't even directly related to the level design, but this is a very important thing. Limit the player's options. If they have 18 buttons they can press, then they have to, fiddle around with 18 buttons to see which button gets them to the next part. If they only have 4 buttons to press, as in my game, which only has left, right, jump, and ground pound, only 4 buttons in the game, aside from pause. But, if that leads into the second principle, which is stick the player in a position where they can't progress without figuring something out. So right here, before we've even entered the first level, we've already stuck the player in a position where they need to figure out how to get into the first level, and they need to figure out the core mechanics of the game. So, after ground pounding, they might figure out, oh, hey, that's next to the left and right buttons. Well, I can go left and right, but if I go left here, and if I go right here, I can't get past this little purple thing. And if I go left here, well, there's a pit. Obviously, I don't want to fall down the pit. So they need to figure out that they can jump. And once they, jump on this button, they see, oh, hey, it's kind of squishy. What if I do that thing that I just learned on the title screen and pound it? And they go into the first level. So, yeah, so like I said, even before we've entered the first level, I've taught the player the core mechanics of the game. And now, I'm going to do a little walkthrough of the first level, showing how I elaborate on that. Of course, this first, at the beginning, we have to teach the player how to jump over obstacles. So there's a little stack of books. And over here, we find kind of the third principle, which is to guide the player with goodies. Naturally, in any platformer, you're going to need some coins. I don't care what platformer it is, they're always coins. Right here, they're mustaches, but they're always coins. Sonic collects rings, Donkey Kong collects bananas. They're all coins. But yeah, so a common tactic is to use those coins not only to pull the player in a certain direction, but also just communicate something explicitly. Like right here, there's a big old down arrow. I wonder what that down arrow means. I mean, I jump up onto this book stack, which, again, going back to the second principle, the player cannot get on top of this book stack until they figure out that, holding the jump button jumps higher. But once they get on this book stack, they might see this other, oh, there's a very special looking coin up there, but I can't jump high enough. Oh, but that big down arrow seemed to be saying something. Oh, hey, if I ground pound on certain platforms, I can go higher. So these are the core mechanics of the game that I've communicated in the first, through the title screen, through the level select screen, through the first moments of the first level. The player knows pretty much all they need to know to play the game at this point. And, once they know that, I give them a little challenge to complete. They need to not master, but at least understand the ground pound bounce to get past this part. And once we get to the top, we have my fourth principle of teaching through level design, which is deliver memorable moments. And that can be something cool, something exciting, something funny, just something that the player is going to do and go like, oh, wow, I'm, and then when they get to another level, they'll like remember, hey, I remember that moment. That's kind of like this thing that applies right now. So right here, the thing is, if you bounce on this book, it sends you in this really cool, like it launches you really far. It's a cool little moment the first time you're playing. And yeah, so and that is an element of the game that I use in many levels to kind of have an angled surface that the player bounces on to launch them in a certain direction. So, going through the rest of this level, it's a short level, it's the first level, but they find some opportunities to put that to use. So like right here, you might be able to get up on that platform by like tilting the plant a little bit until it is angled just right, but you can also just bounce at an angle to get up here and get these goodies. And similarly, we have like our little final test on these little airplanes. They're supposed to be little model airplanes hanging from the ceiling. If we get this at an angle and then bounce, we can get another little goodie up there. And here we are at the final level, the end of the level. Why does it say mom? It's an inside joke. Yeah. So that's the first level that teaches. So there are naturally multiple things you want to teach players when they're playing the game. The core mechanics, of course, are the most important things to teach. But there's also mechanics in any individual level. In a platformer, in a good platformer, you'll usually have like specific gimmicks. And gimmicks sounds like a bad word, but I mean that's really what they are. You'll have like a gimmick that ties, that shows up in a level to make that level interesting, to make that level stand out from other levels. Let's see. Give me just a second. I'm gonna see a question for me. Do I think all game genres can be tutorial-less? No, absolutely not. I think it really depends on the genre. I think if you're making like a real-time strategy game, you absolutely need you're not going to figure that out on your own. If you're making, strategy games, like a fighting game, you're not going to figure out how to do quarter circles and combos. Though I think it's also notable that, you look at something like Minecraft. That game doesn't really have a tutorial. It may now. I haven't played in a while. But it is a pretty obtuse game. But it gets by with without a tutorial by having a community who works together to teach each other. So it's not really teaching through level design, so it's not really the same kind of premise as what I'm talking about here. But it is it is an interesting study in a game that didn't need level design, and that didn't need a tutorial, but still was massively successful. Anyway, so this is, I think, one of my favorite levels I've made. It has interesting gimmicks, and I think uses them in fun ways. So this level, when I'm conceptualizing a level, I sort of come up with a theme first, and this level's theme was based on an artist. So she likes to draw, and she also has a cute, bouncy mascot. So, yes, wow. And so I, thought about what elements could tie into that character. And I introduced those elements here at the beginning of the level. The first element, we can see, it doesn't look like we can go anywhere, but we use Principle 3 of guiding the player with a little coin. That's kind of suspicious. Well, let's walk over this way. And so here is the main mechanic of this level. We have these little platforms that draw in sometimes. And here we kind of learn the platforms don't actually appear until they draw in. So they're not invisible, they actually don't exist until they are visible. And right here we get our second mechanic, which is these bouncy guys. They're called tacos, with a K, T-A-K-O, which is squid in Japanese. And they're friendly. They're just bouncy. And this is... we also should talk about affordances, which is when the player sees something, what are they going to assume it does? So when they see these little tacos, are they going to assume they're enemies? Are they going to assume they're bad? Are they going to, are they even going to assume you can bounce on them or interact with them at all? And so, at the beginning of this level, I try to communicate, yeah, they're friendly. You can bounce on them. But, they look friendly. They look very cute and friendly. But also this little guy kind of draws in early in a sort of memorable moment to kind of welcome you to the level. He kind of says, hey, welcome to the level. Just kind of draws in. So this is the second level, bouncing on these tacos. The second mechanic of this level. So we find out here using, we'll put the fourth principle, memorable moments. If the player tries to bounce over here just casually, they fall. But this little line draws in and catches them, which I think is a pretty memorable moment. Oh no, I think I'm going to die. But it caught me, and I was saved. So, Principle 2, the player is stuck in a position where they can't progress without figuring something out. They have to figure out that they can ground pound on these guys to jump further and higher. And Principle 3, guide the player with collectibles. So, again, we've taught the player that, if they collect those pink things, sometimes those make platforms appear. And here is kind of the third way of interacting with these tacos that I needed to teach the player. And I'm not super happy with how I did this. I think I'm going to change how this works, or how I teach the player through level design in this aspect. But basically, you can tell you're not bouncing high enough normally to get those coins. But if you use the ground pound to bounce higher, you would hit the spikes. So right here, you need to figure out that if you hold the jump button, you can bounce higher and also have more control, which is really important later in the level. And we find, that guy is a little bit different. He's orange. Oh, hello, cat. Here's my cat. So, sometimes bouncing on orange guys activates stuff. Sometimes there are different tacos. And here we have, going back to Principle 2. There's a collectible down there. How do I get that collectible? Well, remember earlier in the level, when I fell and I thought I was going to die, a little line appeared and saved me. So maybe I just have to take a leap of faith. And so if you jump down here, a little line appears. And it's not just a little line, it's a little smiley face. So here's, I wanted to make a cute, memorable moment. Like I said, the memorable moments don't have to be necessarily cool and exciting. They can be a little joke. And I felt like this was a cute little joke that just kind of the smiley face shows up and says, "Hey, I saved you." But that's kind of, that's the second instance in this level of a kind of leap of faith, having the line save you. And here, the player is, again, Principle 2, stuck, can't progress. How do I get over this guy? He's too long, way too long. Well, let's go back to the left. Well, this guy is a different color, much like the orange one earlier on, but he's not doing anything. So how else can I interact with this? I only have so many options. I can bounce higher, I can bounce normally, or I can ground pound. So we find out, okay, ground pounding white tacos sometimes make stuff happen. And then, we got a little... I've turned off the sound for, so it's easier to hear me talk. But if you play the game, you'll get some very silly sounds from these guys. Yeah, and so this part, I mentioned earlier that holding the jump button gives you more control. And that is very important for these sections. And then also, I taught the player earlier on that, oh, hey, those pink things sometimes create platforms. So, maybe I need to go for this pink thing, another leap of faith. And then, at the same time, not necessarily teaching the player anything, but giving them challenges to, like giving the player extra challenges with collectibles is a good way to keep, keep the level interesting for more skilled players, but also make it still fun for less skilled players. Yeah, and then we find, another white takodachi that we need to ground pound to activate it. And here is kind of the payoff of the leaps of faith that we bounce up here and we see, oh, hey, there's a Bubba coin over there. I really want that. How do I get to that? And you might go over here and say, I can't get down there. I mean, I can't find, how do I get to that? And you might eventually just say, okay, a leap of faith. Let's go. And voila. And then in the final section of the level, we have kind of more memorable moments, not so much to teach the player, but just kind of like a nice payoff to the level of having these, giant tacos swinging platforms back and forth. And then one last taco, he's just kind of chilling. He's just kind of doing his own thing. And that's the level. And I think, if this were like a full game I were releasing for people to buy, not just like a free fan game I was putting up on the internet, I think this level would be longer, and I would, iterate on those mechanics more. Um, but free fan game. I do in my spare time. Uh, yeah, I guess I have 6 more minutes. Probably not enough to show off a whole level, but um, I can start just showing. This was in the last update I added. I really feel like I figured out the level design stuff as I was going. Like my first few levels, I feel like I could have done a whole lot better, but as I was going, I think I definitely got better at designing levels, making them interesting, and teaching the player how to play. Like right here, I kind of teach the player how to judge jumps at the very beginning. That, oh, hey, 4 spikes is definitely too high. 3 spikes is pretty high, but can be cleared with a tall jump. But I definitely need a ground pound for 4 spikes. And then, I put this collectible over here that the player's going to jump for, but they're going to hit this thing and immediately find out that reverses gravity. So that's the central mechanic for this level, is reversing gravity. And so now they know whenever they see that, hey, I really need to get that to progress in the level. Like, this is a good thing. So yeah, if there are any questions, I'll answer them as I'm playing this level. I think I heard a microphone.
Hey, Kevin. Yeah, I've got a few questions for you. Sorry, I had my mic disconnected while you talked, so I'm getting background noise. A few questions for you. You talked about how you kind of figure this out on the fly as you went along. Now, do you actually chart out the game progression, what you want them to know, and how you teach it to them through the level?
Sort of. It's more like I think about individual moments that, what is the best way to teach that inverting gravity mechanic? And so I think about what is a specific scenario where the player will be forced to touch that inverted, that icon that inverts the gravity. So, I don't necessarily plot out every single thing before I make the level, because a lot of it is kind of, I don't want to say trial and error, but I guess that is kind of what it is. I'm going to put these platforms here, I'm going to put these spikes here, let's see, is this a good, uh, is this a fun, is this a fun challenge? Is it annoying? Is it too hard? Is it too easy? Does it actually teach what I want the player to learn? Because sometimes I do things that I think, hey, this clearly teaches what the player should learn. Like earlier with the bouncing on the tacos, I wanted to teach that you need to hold the jump button to bounce higher. But when I watched people play, they didn't quite figure that out. So I've adjusted that part a few times, and I'm still not, like I said, I'm still not totally happy with that part. But yeah, I mean, it's less about thinking about the level as a whole and more about thinking about here's a block that'll teach them this. Here's a block that'll iterate on this. Here's a block that'll teach them the other mechanic, and then sort of mentally kind of shifting them around and mentally shifting around, but also physically shifting them around. I often in the level have them configured as here's this challenge, and it is one block inside of an empty, and I just move that empty around, and so maybe I have a later part of the level that I think should come earlier, so I'll just scoot that empty earlier and then scoot other empties forward. Yeah, if that answered.
Yeah, good way to look at how you put it all together. One last question before we run out of time. It's a two-part question. Do players complain about not having a tutorial, and do you think you've lost players from not having a tutorial?
I have had people complain. and perhaps I've lost players. I think any game is going to make decisions that some players don't like. And I think a good designer will listen to that feedback and will not necessarily do what the players tell them to do, but listen to where the players are coming from. So, like, I heard players say, hey, I found this frustrating, you should tell me how to do it. And my response wasn't, no, I'm going to leave it the way it is, but my response also wasn't, no, yes, I'm going to add text explicitly telling you how to play, but in the middle, I looked at the part that they were getting frustrated with and kind of rethought how I could teach them that mechanic. And I feel like I've done a fairly good job on it, because I've watched a couple of people who have never played platformers before. This was their first platformer, and this is a pretty tough platformer, like, not Celeste hard, but fairly tough. And they were able to understand how to play and progress through most of the game. And so I feel like that was pretty successful if someone who's never played this kind of game before.
All right, great insights. Thank you, Kevin. We're going to go ahead and move
Players are really great at telling you when something isn't right. Players usually aren't great at telling you how to fix it. That is great.